Hello and welcome to E2E's Business Unusual, a video content series for and by the SME community. Our goal is to help entrepreneurs navigate this very difficult time since COVID-19. Today we're joined by Lyndsey Simpson, owner of Copperhouse Bars Limited. Lyndsey, welcome and thank you for being part of this.
Pleasure.
So just to get the ball rolling, can you just give us a bit of an overview of who Lyndsey is and also what your business is?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Fergus. So in terms of my background, Fergus, first half of my career, I was a banker working in the M&A part of the industry. And for the last 14 years, I've been an entrepreneur. For the large majority of that, I was the co-owner of a large outsourcer called the Curve Group. And took that to 24 million turnover last year, and sold my equity stake in that business in February this year, so just 8 weeks ago. My other business, Copperhouse Bars, is a premium champagne and cocktail bar with food, which is a startup business. So that opened in April 19 and was trading 10 months before we unfortunately had to close in March this year.
Wow. Okay. And how have you and your employees fared since COVID-19? Obviously, hospitality is a very affected sector.
Indeed, we made the decision to close the business the evening of the 19th of March, which was actually 24 hours before the government advised bars and restaurants that they had to close. So we were kind of early to the party, which in some ways actually made us feel quite vindicated for making that decision, and protecting not only our employees, but customers that we had continue to be booked in for that weekend, which was Mothering Sunday. In terms of the impact, it's been massive. That business has fully shut down. So all 30 employees have been furloughed. The business has been mothballed as far as we can, from a trading perspective. We did explore delivery and takeaway routes, but they were just not commercially viable at all for our type of proposition and in that location. So from a people perspective, yes, we have managed to retain all bar 2 employees that didn't qualify for the furlough scheme because they joined us after the cut-off date. But everybody else is on furlough whilst we then work out plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E, and all the various different scenarios to get us reopen.
And if we just go it feels like a long time ago, back to January, February of this year, again, a new business and just like we were talking earlier, the website looks great and it looks like you set up a really nice kind of restaurant bar. What were you looking forward to achieving this year before all these changes were forced on us?
So it's quite ironic, really, just how much difference 8 weeks made. So one of the purposes of me exiting my shareholding in the Curve Group was to free up capital to open a second site for Copperhouse. So we were actively looking to invest in, having had the first one for almost a year, proved the concept, developed a great brand, was smashing our targets with our champagne partner Moët and Chandon, and really developing a following. All eyes were on, really getting that to an operational scale-up perspective and looking at second and third site. Clearly, that angle now is completely removed, for not just the short to medium term, but probably the long term, quite frankly. And we're looking at different ways of deploying the capital and funding the business to ensure that it actually does survive, not just comes out and thrives. So, yeah, challenging time.
Yeah, and the government's announced various measures, and again, there's various clarifications, over the last previous days and weeks. It sounds like you've been able to take advantage of the furlough scheme.
Yes.
Are there other parts that you've been able to take advantage of?
So the only things that we've been able to take are the furlough scheme, which is phenomenal. We would have absolutely had to make those employees redundant had it not been for that scheme. Secondly, we get the benefits, as do a number of businesses, on rates relief for 12 months. And finally, the deferral of our VAT is helpful into the following reopen periods. Unfortunately, the two major things that we needed to access have not been available to us. And we are a classic case of a business that's fallen between the cracks of the best intentions of the Treasury. So we don't qualify for any of the grant assistance that is there for the hospitality industry, of which most businesses, all of our competitors in our location in Berkhamsted, are receiving a £25,000 grant. We don't qualify because we're in the most expensive building in that high street, so our rateable value is too high to qualify, so we get nothing. Secondly, we applied and given, I'm a banker, ex-banker, my husband's an ex-banker, and corporate bankers, so understand that segment. We applied for the coronavirus business interruption loan, and transparency, needed to secure about £150,000 worth of funding through that line, and were turned down at the end of last week after a 5-week application process based on us black and white not being eligible by being a startup in the investment phase of its business. It disqualifies us from the scheme. So, so we are obviously encouraged by the announcements last 24, 48 hours about the bounce back loan, albeit that's only a maximum of 50,000, so leaves us 100,000 short of what we would need to resume trading. And the other two areas that aren't available yet with government support, but really would make a phenomenal difference to our business, and I think other hospitality businesses, would be a rent relief period. So we are still paying full rent, £25,000 a quarter to remain shut, and not able to move that negotiation forward with our landlords, because our landlord is in exactly the same boat as us, and they have no income, and they're a small business, they're not some big corporate property company. And secondly, the utility companies. So as a heavy user of electricity and gas, we have an extensive bill payment program with them, and they are showing no willingness whatsoever to provide any support to us, and would just threaten, disconnection. So whilst we're looking to be remaining closed for such a prolonged period, we really need the government to step in with utilities and landlords to enable them to pass it forward to their ultimate customers.
And how are you able to get these, let's say, calls for help or business needs? How are you able to get that message kind of to the decision makers, to government?
Yeah, well, we've done a few things really. So we're lobbying our council, which is Dacorum Borough Council. So they're probably completely sick of the sight of my email address and my telephone, because they get a weekly call from me. We're lobbying our local MP for Hertfordshire, who is also written to the council and has taken some of our feedback around the business interruption loan scheme back into government. And we've also used the media to get behind us. Two things. Firstly, we were filmed on Sky News a couple of weeks ago as an example of a hospitality business, to just bring to life, the challenges businesses face. I think the great many consumers out there think a business can close down and its costs go to zero. And in reality, of course, it costs us a huge amount of money to remain closed. You've got your rent, you've got your insurances, you've got your alarms, you've got your system licenses costs, all of these things that don't go away and just accrue with no income. So between those measures, we're championing and really trying to vocalise that voice, both in the media and through government, through the MP channel. And then secondly, we're using our customers. So we went out yesterday with a survey to our customer base. We've had the most unbelievable response. It's a 24-question survey in detail, and within the first 24 hours, we've had over 1,200 responses of the full survey. So that's nearing a 50% completion rate from our customers, who are helping to, understand and share with us what their likelihood will be to return to restaurants, return to bars in the wake of no vaccine, and different scenarios. So between all of these different channels, we're trying to both push out information but receive information to help us make better decisions.
Wow, no, it's great to hear as well that your customers in the short period of time are in it and supporting you. And was talking to another founder entrepreneur as part of this series last week, and he was saying as well that this is the time when consumers will remember the good businesses
They
and
will.
the not
Oh,
so
I've
good.
already
And
got a list of companies that literally they can burn for all I care. And then I've got my halo list, and there's a lot of
yes,
businesses and consumers that will be in exactly that same boat.
yeah, no, interesting. And based upon this government support, um, announced and useful, and then hopefully will be useful, do you think there'll be a change between kind of business and society, business and taxpayer, in terms of what they expect, what voters and government expect from business?
Yeah, I think there is. I think there's two aspects to that. There's a financial aspect to it, and then I think there's a social and an emotional response. I think if I start on the social emotional response, and it ties into what you were just saying, Fergus, in that CSR was something that most companies talked about, most companies paid lip service to, and very few companies actually had owners or leaders that got their shoulders behind it and made a difference. I think CSR has become now elevated right up the food chain of what's important to both customers but also employees, to an extent that doing good, and I don't just mean giving money to charity, but doing right by their employees, doing right by their customers, doing right by their suppliers. These things now are going to, I think, infiltrate the new ethics of business and dictate actually who will win in the long term. And I think some of those more short term, unscrupulous businesses will see that their support dwindles. On the more financial side of that debate around society, government, etc., I think I dread to know what the number's going to tot up to when they finally add up the Treasury bill for this period and the support. But I know that I probably won't be alive. I'm 41. I'm pretty sure I won't be alive to see us pay it off. So I think the country needs to understand that there will be a period of austerity that will have to come out of this around public spending in some way, shape, or form. I think there has to be an element of paying back this tax relief when the economy and business is able to do so. But unfortunately for the Treasury and for the government and that cycle, I think there's a period of time that needs to escape before businesses are going to be in a position, or consumers are going to be in a position, to actually see their income drop again by then stepping up their tax levels. But I think it's going to be tough times. The only salvation from that is that we are not alone. We are an island, but we're not an island, and we are in this with the rest of the world who are facing equal measures. But we were slightly better placed, in my opinion, going into it by having a period of austerity running into this period, which just gave the Treasury more options than would have done had they been on a spending spree leading up to this.
Interesting, right? And moving on to I'd say the human cost of this, right? We were just talking about the financial cost
Mm.
on both you as a founder and your founding team, and we'll also talk about employees.
Mm.
But regarding kind of like the mental health piece, this period, it's been compared to the grieving
Yeah,
process.
yeah.
Where would you say you are in those 5 stages of grief?
I'd say I'm quite fortunate. Um, in two aspects. One, I'm a glass half full person, so that does help because that is an outlook on life. Secondly, I do feel to an extent that I went there and got the t-shirt on that cycle in 2008. So trading through the first financial crash was the first recession of my working career, where I really understood and had a business that I couldn't influence in that scenario. I absolutely went through every stage of that grief cycle back in 2008, and I can remember every moment as vividly now as I could 12 years ago. Here and today, the lessons I learned from that were that A, there is no point stressing about things that are outside of your control. And secondly, no one, no matter how good they are or how good their business is, can make a market. So if the market disappears, all you can do is be the fastest and the best responder to the new situation than the creator of a perfect market. Just because what you were doing before that event was successful is no guarantee of what you do after that event. And I think learning those two things and carrying those with me as battle scars has meant that I pretty much went straight into acceptance on lockdown. Um, and have literally been focusing my efforts going forward. That's not to say everyone around me is in that same boat. You're quite right. We have been making sure that we touch out to every employee at least once a week. We have a team WhatsApp group, which just enables us to both keep in contact, have a bit of banter with each other whilst we're all in different locations. We've made it incredibly focused for us to make sure that our employees know their personal financial situations. So knowing exactly when they're furloughed through to, exactly what guarantee pay is going to be, what that number's going to look like on their pay slip before we submit it to the scheme, and so they know what they've got coming, what day they're going to get paid, how long for, so they can plan. And the feedback that they've been giving us is given that certainty, and us involving them in the decisions and keeping them updated has been helping them kind of see a way forward rather than just suddenly be at home in splendid isolation.
Very interesting. And from just keeping in contact with your employees, have you seen them do anything that either as a professional or as a good human being have been like, that's great, I'm so pleased to be working with you, thank you, or just happy that they've been able to take any actions?
Yeah, I mean, every day, to be honest. The most standout day for us was the 20th of March. It was the Friday that we contacted every employee that morning and telling them that we were closing. And at that point, as far as they were concerned, that they were being made redundant because there was no furlough scheme, there was no protection. So at that moment in time, they know we're closing and that we can't guarantee them a job from that point. And their response was phenomenal. You know, our chef and our kitchen team came in that day. They didn't have to; they weren't being paid for it, but they came in and spent the entire day doing a deep clean of our kitchen, of our fridges, of cling filming the world to prevent dust, and creating food parcels of all of our leftover foods for us to pass out to people. And our bar team came back and cleaned down all the beer lines, closed down all of the cellars, all of these things that they were, you know, doing of their own time, wouldn't accept payment for, and were just standout proper human beings. And yeah, it was, from us as owners, it's emotional when people really stand up like that for you. And in return, you know, a lot of what we're doing now is to protect them and to make sure that we do get through this so that they have a job to come back to at the end of it.
Well, that's great. Yeah, and it really is in these situations where you see kind of like sometimes the worst, but often the best of human beings.
Go and ask me the companies that are on my devil list. No. I've seen
Maybe
the worst
that
of some of those as well.
I'll talk to Shalini, and maybe that will be another series. Maybe you can host it, Lyndsey's Devil List. And then just as we begin to kind of close, get to the final few questions, it sounds like that 07, 08, 09 were huge learning experiences.
Yeah.
From this experience, it sounds like, yes, you've been able to apply those learnings, but is there anything that you're doing differently now that you've learned from coping with where we are in COVID?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I've got three takeaways that I've promised myself that I will carry forward once we're out of lockdown and normality does return. One is the obvious one that I'm sure will live with lots of people, which is to do daily exercise rather than just allocate 2 to 3 hours a week of an evening when I'm tired to go and do a class. So making the time and realizing that just getting out in the open air once a day is good for the soul. Secondly, I love business books. I just eat business books for breakfast, but I normally prioritize to binge eating them whilst I'm on holiday. And so this has given me the opportunity to do at least an hour a day of investing in time in brilliant business books, of which there's just so many out there. And I found that just so useful in terms of generating ideas for the current business. So I'll definitely take that one forward. Um, And then in terms of the third thing I want to kind of move forward is really quite a recent thing, which is about customers taking control of our direction. So this survey that we put out yesterday for Copper House has had, as I say, normal industry responses to a survey of that ilk are 0.3% to 3, sorry, 0.5 to 3%. We're nearing 50% completion after 24 hours of the survey. And that tells me that A, our customers care, but B, en masse, they know better than we do. They're the ones that are buying our services. So let them dictate our direction. So where I think we're going to be heading to is ending up with a core big group of customers as a focus group that literally we test everything. So do you prefer menu A or menu B? Do you prefer this cocktail list or this cocktail list? Do you prefer this set of opening hours or this set of opening hours? Do you think we should allow dogs or not? Any question that we would normally just answer ourselves based on our own opinions, we're going to push out to customers and let them dictate the direction of this business. And hopefully by doing that, give them something that they want to consume over everything else once we come out of this.
Great. And the final question, when lockdown ends or when we get to the next normal, like you said earlier, things are very unlikely to return to how they were in January, February. What are you looking forward to achieving, both for your business and maybe something as well on the personal side?
I think for the business, coming out, opening and breaking even will be a phenomenal achievement. When we have no line of sight over how extensive social distancing is going to be and what that means for us, if we can get a business that breaks even for 6 months post reopening, then we've done really well. And that's a new, whereas it used to be about profit, used to be about second sight, a break even after 6 months, well, we protect jobs, we protect a listed building, we've done right, and we can grow from that point. From a personal perspective, I love my holidays. I'm missing my holidays. We've had a couple cancelling this period, and we're backing up celebrations this year. So it's my 10th wedding anniversary. It's my mother-in-law's 70th birthday last week. It's my mum and dad's 50th wedding anniversary. It's my birthday this Saturday. So we're kind of stacking up those celebrations to have, one hell of a party, and bring people back together again. And then when it's safe to do so, I will be, flying off to somewhere warmer and plonking myself on a sun lounger and having the moment of reflection I was going to have on selling my business after 13 years that never actually happened.
And just, I'm going for the final question. The venue for all these celebrations, I'm assuming Copper House Bar?
It's got to be Copper House, hasn't it? It's got to be
Yeah.
Copper House. Yeah, it is going to be the biggest party in town. We've already had streets of people say that whole streets want to come and celebrate together getting through this. So yeah, you might see a whole return to 1940s England, where people having street parties again to just kind of live that community and camaraderie, but hopefully with someone else, aka us, serving the drinks.
Lyndsey, thank you very, very much. And I look forward to coming to an opening, your grand reopening later in the year, I hope.
Perfect. Thank you, Fergus. Good to talk to you.